Welcome back. We are doing 11.4, the second half of this sheet. If you have not done the first half, go ahead and go back to 11.4a video. All right, so we are going to be adding and subtracting rational expressions or fractions without common denominators. So we know that we need common denominators, but take a look down here on example 4, 3x and 7 do not match. X plus 2 and x minus 5 do not match. So we can't go straight into adding across the tops or subtracting. So what can we do? We can make it so that the fractions have common denominators. So we're going to take the first fraction and we're going to multiply the top and the bottom of that first fraction times the denominator of the second fraction. For example, in number 4, we're going to take this 7 that's down here and multiply it on top and bottom of that first fraction. Let's go ahead and write that right now. So we're going to take this 7 that's down here and multiply it to the bottom and the top of the first fraction. Okay, our denominators are still not going to match. This one says 7 times 3x. This one only says 7. So this denominator is missing something. It is missing a 3x. So not only do we multiply this denominator times the first fraction, we're going to multiply the first denominator times the second fraction. So it's another multiply. Okay, so this 3x that's down here gets multiplied on top and on bottom of that second fraction. Okay. Now you are actually going to multiply those out for a couple of things. So if it's only one term times one term, multiply it out. Do not multiply denominators if it's a set of parentheses times something else. We can just kind of leave it because eventually we really want the denominator all factored out anyway. So work it out if it's one term times one term. Work it out for the numerators, always. Always numerators, only denominators if it's one term times one term. All right, so after you do all of the multiplication, you're going to complete the adding and subtracting like we did in the first video, numbers 1, 2, and 3 up above. Keep in mind all of the rules like distributing, subtraction. All right, let's take a look at this problem number 4. I'm going to go ahead and put the plus in both of those fraction bars so we have a place to write everything. All right, top of first fraction says 7 times 5 is 35. Bottom of first fraction, 7 times 3x is 21x. Second fraction top, 2x squared times 3x, 2 times 3 is 6. X squared times x is x cubed, right? Because you add those exponents, the 2 plus the invisible 1. Denominator of second fraction, 7 times 3x is 21x. Now, I know that you could simplify both of those fractions, but then we would just end up with what we started with, and that's the opposite of what we want. We want to be able to combine this stuff together. So now that we have a common denominator, we're going to actually add, combining like terms on the top if there are any, and of course when we add and subtract, we keep the denominator. All right, put everything in standard form, so our biggest exponent is a 3, 6x cubed. Nothing with an x squared, nothing with just an x, so plus 35 at the end. 6 and 35 do not have any common factors besides 1. This guy has x's, this term does not have x's, so we are done. There's nothing that we can do to simplify this out at all. You are not allowed to simplify individual terms, so you cannot cross out those x's, you cannot like divide the 6 and the 21 by 3. You're stuck. Number 5. This one, we are going to want to put parentheses around some denominators. So I'm going to put pink parentheses around the first one and blue around the second. Okay. Step 1 from the instructions up above say multiply the first fraction times the denominator of the second fraction. So I'm going to take this blue parentheses, x minus 5, and multiply it up here. X minus 5, and down here, x minus 5. Step 2, multiply the second fraction times the denominator of the first fraction. So that was x plus 2. Let's copy it down. X plus 2, x plus 2. Because when you are doing a thing to a fraction, multiplying or dividing, you have to do top and bottom. All right, looks like we have some distributing on this first top. 7 times x plus 5. So the 7 gets multiplied times the x and times the negative 5. Let's go ahead and draw out the fraction bars so we have a place for everything. Okay, 7 times x is 7x. 7 times negative 5 is negative 35. Now, like I said before, when you have sets of parentheses in the denominator, you definitely don't want to multiply them out. So let's just copy x minus 5, x plus 2. Okay, top of second fraction, distributing as well. 3 times x and 3 times 2. 3 times x is 3x, 3 times 2 is 6. And then the denominator, again, keep it. X minus 5, x plus 2. Okay, at this step, both of your denominators should perfectly match, which means that we get to add. So 7x plus 3x is 10x. Negative 35 plus 6 is negative 19. And then keep your denominator and just leave it all factored out. X minus 5, x plus 2. Okay, is there anything to factor in the numerator? There's only 2 terms, so let's see, it's not difference of squares because the 10 and the 19 are not perfect squares. It's also not an x squared, it's just x. And 10 and 19 don't share any factors other than 1, so there's no greatest common factor. That means there's nothing to factor out, and we are done. Okay, number 6. The difference for number 6 is that there is a minus in between. So we want to take that minus, change it to a plus, and then distribute that minus, or negative 1, to everything in that second numerator. So I'm just going to make that a negative 6. All right, let's do the same thing with those denominators that we did before. I'm going to do blue parentheses for the second one, pink parentheses for the first one. Okay. Now we're going to take that blue parentheses and multiply it times top and bottom of the first guy, first fraction. So x minus 2, x minus 2. Second fraction needs x plus 4. Okay, the way that I think of it is, what is this denominator missing that the other denominator has? This denominator does not have an x plus 4, so give it 1. This denominator does not have an x minus 2, so give it 1. All right, let's keep going. Fraction plus a fraction now, right? Change from a minus to a plus when we distribute it up there. Okay, it looks like 11 gets multiplied times x for 11x. 11 times negative 2 is negative 22. Copy the denominator, x minus 2, x plus 4. Second fraction, we have a negative 6 times x and a negative 6 times 4, which is negative 6x minus 24. Copy denominator, x minus 2, x plus 4. Okay, since the denominators match, copy the denominator, combine like terms across the numerator. 11x minus 6x is 5x. Negative 22 minus 24 is negative 46. Okay, there's no difference of squares on top, and there's no greatest common factor other than 1. So it is as simple as this fraction can get. Okay, last one, number 7. This one is different because the denominator is a trinomial. It's not factored out. So let's go ahead and factor out that denominator. Okay. So our first fraction is 5 over x and x. Let's see, minus for the big one, different sign for the small one. Looks like plus 3 and minus 4. All right. Now, kind of what I was alluding to on number 6 is that on number 7 here, this denominator already has the x plus 3 that this denominator has. So really, just the second fraction is missing an x minus 4 down in that denominator. So I'm going to take just the x minus 4 and multiply it times that second fraction on bottom and top. Totally ran out of room here. So x minus 4, x minus 4. Okay, so now both denominators match, and you didn't actually have to do anything to the first one. Okay, let's do our distributing. So x plus 3, x minus 4, and the top is just a 5 on that first fraction. Second fraction, we have a 2 times x and a 2 times negative 4, so that is 2x minus 8 over x plus 3 times x minus 4. And now we finally get to combine because our denominators perfectly match. Okay, combining like terms, biggest exponent is a 1, so 2x first. And then 5 minus 8 is negative 3. There is no common factor between 2 and 3 besides 1, and there is no difference of squares on that top, so the top does not factor. There's nothing to cross out. The end.